Welcome to Bet On It, sponsored by wagertalk.com. It is week 16 in the NFL, and boy, do we have a slate of really good primetime games. Well, a couple of them at least, and some really stinky sandwiches, and trying to figure out who's going to be the team to buy on during the playoffs, and trying to find a barking dog this week that isn't going to get completely obliterated or do something stupid like the Colts was a tough one. But we're going to get into it. I am Kelly Stewart, joined by Marco D'Angelo, Joe Raineri, and Teddy Covers. Welcome in, guys. Let's see if we can navigate this NFL slate without making me just completely want to stop betting through the end of the playoffs. It's been a rough one. I need some help from you guys. If you guys can relate in the comment section, let me know. Because Twitter was not very nice to me last week after Jonathan Taylor just so nicely, well, you know what he did. And then Anthony Richardson. I digress. Joe Raineri, you're going first. It is Thursday night football. My Denver Broncos are a 3-point underdog at the LA Chargers, 42.5. Keep wanting to bet against the Denver Broncos, Joe. As I mentioned, I did last week with the Colts, and God, did Sean Payton sell his soul? What is going on with this team? They're one of the luckiest teams in the NFL this year. Bo Nix at times last week did not appear like he knew what the hell he was doing. And then, well, the tides turned and the Denver Broncos rolled.
So I can't understate how important this game is for both these teams. So the Broncos can clinch a playoff spot with this game if they win. And we're talking about, to your point, Kelly, a team that was projected, I believe, 5.5 was their win total. They were carrying almost $88 million in dead money, thanks to good old Russ there, and young players all over the place, including a rookie quarterback. And here we are, one win away from making the playoffs. The Chargers are in the same boat, though. They can clinch a playoff spot with a win as long as the Dolphins and the Colts lose on Sunday. And my fear with the Chargers here is this doesn't even look remotely close to the same offense since J.K. Dobbins landed himself on the IR. I mean, they have been pretty much close to dead last in a lot of offensive categories here since week 13. Not to mention they can't protect Justin Herbert anymore. And you saw that last week with the Buccaneers, who blitzed him on about 64% of his dropbacks. He's dealing with injuries. And when you got into his face, boy, it was tough sledding for them. And don't let that score last week fool you here in either the Denver game as well as the Charger game here. A lot of that had to do with these defenses here. I do believe Denver's coming after Herbert. I think they're going to take advantage of that. I also think that Bo Nix is a little bit worrisome. That was the worst game we've seen him in a long time. 3 interceptions against the Colts. He's done a pretty good job this season for a rookie. Had a nice stretch there, but both of these offenses, I got big question marks about. I think on a short week here, Thursday night game, I'm looking at the under, Cal. 42.5 is where I'm going. I trust the defenses, both defenses, in fact, to limit what the other team is going to want to do offensively. And what we've gotten recently from both these offenses, not impressed. I don't see any sort of wild shootout with a playoff spot locked, loaded, and ready to go with whoever wins this game. Yeah, not me. This is going to be a playoff-style atmosphere. I'm going under 42.5.
Ooh, 42.5. Currently on the Wager Talk odds screen for Joe Raineri. Let's move over to Saturday night primetime. Marco D'Angelo's Pittsburgh Steelers, 6.5, pretty much across the board now. At Baltimore, 44.5. This one's coming down as well. Marco, tell me about your team. This is a spot where I like to back Mike Tomlin as an underdog. Do you think he gets it done?
Well, Kelly, I'm not on the game itself this week. As I said last week, we were all over Philadelphia against Pittsburgh because Pittsburgh was in a horrible spot. The division comes down to this week. Pittsburgh wins, they win the division. It's over. If Baltimore wins, they're tied, and then we see what happens the next 2 weeks. But the history of this series, as we know, is generally it's going to be a 3-point game one way or the other. And generally, it's a low-scoring game. And, what was the first meeting? Well, it was decided by 2 points. Baltimore missed a 2-point conversion at the end of the game to tie it, and Pittsburgh won in a low-scoring game, 18-16. So, yeah, you're seeing the total coming down because that's the way the public's going to look at it. But really, if you go back and look at that game, Pittsburgh settled for 6 field goals. Now, you could say that's great defense, or maybe it was bad offense, whatever. But the Pittsburgh offense has played better until last week. And the reason last week, and as I stated to anybody that would listen, Philadelphia was the best defense they had faced all season long. They were also without George Pickens, which they have been for the last 2 weeks. Pickens will be back for this week's game. I believe he could have played last week, but because Pittsburgh has this big game coming up and then they have a short turnaround to the game with Kansas City on Christmas Day, on Wednesday, they wanted to hold him out to have him as close to 100% as they could for this one. Also in that game, in the first meeting, Baltimore turned the football over in that game. That cost them some scoring opportunities. Also, something you never see from Baltimore, Tucker missed not 1 but 2 field goals in that game. So there were points left all over the field in that first meeting. I think you're going to see a much more fluid game. And remember, because of all the low scoring, because of all the mistakes, it was a 1-possession game the entire game. So neither team ever had to take chances and stretch the field, or they settled for playing field position. I don't see that this time. I see one of these teams getting out to a quick score and maybe extending it to 2 scores, and it changes the entire complexion of the flow of the game. I'm going over the total in this one. I think we're getting a soft number in this one. The Baltimore defense is not what it was in years past. They've given up 24 or more points 8 times this year. Take it over the total Saturday night.
All right, Teddy is going to Sunday Night Football. Tampa Bay -4. Teddy on the odds screen here on wagertalk.com. Everywhere but Circa has a 3.5. I thought that was really interesting at the Dallas Cowboys. 48.5. What do you make of it when a sharper book has a more advantageous number?
So it's interesting that it's one sharper book. All right. When we're talking about a scenario where all the sharp books are at 3.5 and all the public books are at 4 or 4.5, there's a dichotomy there. And it's something you pay attention to. That being said, sharp bettors lose every week. It's not like sharp bettors win every game. And there are plenty of times where I'm very comfortable lining up with the quote unquote square side and betting against some of the wise guys. So it's certainly a scenario where we don't love to be on the public side, certainly on the national TV games. But it's not a scenario where, that's an auto bet against, because the public's on them, I'm going to leave it. It's the sharps like the other side, I'm going to leave this one alone. I don't mind fading the sharp money sometimes, and I'll do it in this ballgame. And it's worth noting, Circa, as we record, the only book at 3.5. So it's not like when we look at the global pantheon of books that cater to recreational bettors versus books that cater to the more sophisticated bettors, that we're seeing a significant dichotomy. It's just one book. It could easily be one guy that likes Dallas, and he bet him at Circa. So I don't put too much into it. And I don't like Dallas this week. All right. Especially now the Cowboys finally got off the schneid. They got their win last week. They talked about how they were embarrassed that they were underdogs against Carolina. C.D. Lamb's quote after the game. It was brought up. Yeah, it was brought up, I'm sure. And they're dogs here, but this time they're dogs to a good team. They're not being dogs to the Panthers. And look, I understand Dallas's offense worked last week. They scored on 6 of 8 possessions at one point in the game. The only exception was one time they turned the ball over deep in Carolina territory, and then the field goal, a long field goal attempt before halftime. So the offense actually clicked for extended stretches last week, and they got the W. So we know that Dallas has no home field advantage. I mean, literally none. When you look at how poorly that team has played at home this year and down the stretch last year, it almost feels like there's a weight on their shoulders when they're playing in Dallas. All right. They just got off the schneid last week. We've seen they got some pretty ugly numbers when you look at the matchups in this ballgame. I mean, Dallas, number 29 in rush defense. They're giving up 4.8 yards per carry. Tampa, right now, number 2 in the NFL running the football. The duo of Rashard White and Bucky Irving again last week. 181 yards on the ground. A 223-32 rushing edge against LA. All right. So one team can run the football, the other team can't stop the run. Yeah, maybe it's the square side, but for this better, it's Tampa or pass on Sunday night.
Kind of don't blame me there, Teddy. I would have to agree. And that's kind of how I feel about, well, Monday Night Football. And somehow I got left with the most ugly primetime game on the board. The New Orleans Saints, 14-point underdogs at the Green Bay Packers. 42.5 is what this one opened up at. And hey, look, let's talk about this Green Bay Packers team. They've covered 4 of their last 5. And they haven't had a really easy go, even though they've been able to make the most of it, right? Let's see who they've played. Home against the Lions, the 49ers, the Dolphins, at the Bears, played the Lions again, and then the Seahawks. And while, Green Bay went up quickly on Sunday night against that same Seahawks team, I do still think that was a tough game. And who do they have on deck? Oh, wait, that's right. The Vikings. And then who do they have after that? Oh, that's right. Another divisional opponent in the Bears. I'm not sure I'm willing to lay double digits here with this Packers team versus a Saints team that, well, it's kind of, would you say they're playing with house money? None of it really matters. We saw it against the Washington Commanders. If you had them in teasers, you know what I'm talking about. That was absolutely gross. We can blame the refs all we want. But the Saints were able to punch it in to cover teasers. And then they said, hey, you know what? We're going to go for it. We're going to try to win this football game. And I think those are the types of teams that I don't want to be betting against right now. Teams with nothing to lose versus a team with a lot to play for. So if you guys are going to make me pick this ugly Monday night game, I guess I got to take the 14 here with the New Orleans Saints. All right, guys, you can kick off the new year with an edge. Purchase a 30-day all-access package for January for $299, and we're going to give you guys the rest of December completely free. You guys have until Christmas Eve to sign up. Again, purchase a 30-day all-access pass for January. We're going to give you guys the rest of December. Let's go check in with VR. See what gold he's got for week 16 in the NFL. VR, how are we going to navigate some of these intricacies that are the late season betting in the NFL, right? We've got, well, whether it's players being seeded, whether it's playoffs being clinched, whether it's, quarterbacks being benched, looking at you, Kirk Cousins. I love to look for overreactions. Do you think this is a good time to find them?
That's the way to do it, Kel, and factor in weather as well. But if you're not ahead of it, there's one way to do it. That's wait for confirmation, because otherwise you're guessing. And when you're laying 11 to 10, it's not really good to guess. It's probably not going to turn out well for you. The bottom line is this. I've done well late in the season. I've done this the last couple of weeks, actually, because we're coming down to that time where we know some must-win games. So you're paying a premium, like you touched on, with the benching, with the injuries. And I talked about the weather. All those things, once they're quantified, we could then decide, did they over-quantify it, under-quantify it, overvalue, undervalue it? Because that's what usually the market does, rather than guess what's going to happen. I wait for confirmations, a few bets early in the week, most of my bets late in the week, and I have no problem doing that. It's turned out well for me. And as you'll see, what the betting syndicates are doing late in the season in NFL, the biggest bets come late, come game day. That's what I've seen, because earlier they're simply taking advantage of a lot of the biases and, most importantly, recency bias by getting out ahead of the bettors. Puts them in a position where they can come back, work the middle, or worst case, they got a good ticket in their pocket. So we could go from top to bottom and you'll see what I'm talking about, because they almost got out ahead of all of these biases coming off last week and last few weeks of results.
Break it down, week 16, what you've seen so far on Wednesday. And then on Sunday, for Wager Talk's last call, we'll confirm whether these early bets did come to fruition.
Great point. Start off with Thursday night. No surprise. Red hot Denver Broncos. This is a team that's covered 7 of their last 8 games. They've won 4 straight. They scored 30-plus points in 3 of their last 4. They're getting a key number of 3. Of course, you're going to get betting public that's probably going to back the dog there against a Chargers team that's lost 2 straight. So what happened? They took the 3. That's why you're looking at 2.5. There'll probably be some 3s as well, because there's usually a difference of opinion when you have that key number. But that's what happened on Thursday. Then move on to Saturday. Obviously, the Mahomes situation. He had a good practice, so the money came in on Mahomes. As you know, the Texans opened up about 4.5, 3.5. That was the look ahead. They were favored in Kansas City. Not no more because of the Mahomes situation. Also, Steelers, Ravens, under. No surprise. That's usually what's going to happen on the Steelers versus the Ravens. I'm sure there's some weather related as well. Look ahead was 47. We're now looking at 44. So that's already been baked into the cake if you're betting it now because of that. Move on to Sunday's action. Browns have lost now 2 straight against a Bengals team that's won 2 straight. And more importantly, let's not forget the Bengals were -5 earlier in the year, and they won that game by 7, I believe. They laid the 6.5 there and the 7, that key number. That's why you're looking at, I believe, 7.5. Now, Lions, Bears. Again, they just played a couple weeks ago, right? -10 at Chicago. That's what the Lions were. They only won that game by 3. So what did they do? They came in and took the key 7.5 on the Bears. No surprise with the Lions coming off that Buffalo loss. Big game for them. Also, the under got bet when that dummied up 48.5. Once it got down to 46.5, I saw a lot of accounts get bet over, like more than the small money that pushed it down to 46.5. Dropped down to Eagles and Commanders, another under. 47.5 was the look ahead. We're looking at 45.5 right now. Again, most of the value as far as weather-related, injury-related stuff has been baked into the cake. Be careful if that's the reasoning for your bet. Giants +10. I mean, no surprise. Atlanta laying double digits. This is a team that's won 2 games since the beginning of November. They've covered like once since the beginning of November. They lost 4 of their last 5 games, but they're giving double digits. No surprise they took the Giants there. Titans also 4.5 and 4 on Tennessee. Public's going to be heavy on the Colts looking at that breakdown. Move down to the Vikings. Interesting game. The look ahead had the Vikings 1.5, but then they've opened them, I think, 4.5. Since then, it's been nothing but Seattle, even though you're looking at a Vikings team that I believe won 7 straight, scored again 30+ in 3 of their last 4. But they're taking that 4 and 4.5, the 4.5 and the 3.5, I believe, even on the Seattle Seahawks. Very telling sign there. And finally, Niners, Dolphins, under. Look ahead is 48.5, 49. They bet it all the way down to 47. That wasn't enough. They came back and hit it again at 46.5. That's why we're looking at 44.5 right now. That's what's going on earlier in the week. As I said, a lot of it is simply taking advantage of recency bias and what they think the bettors saw last and what they're going to do this week. And as the week progresses, you will see more legit moves. And come Sunday, we'll be able to confirm where we want to be on. So hope you can use that information and do some damage.
Do some damage, VR. Let everybody know where they can get your premium plays over at wagertalk.com.
Yeah, head on over to wagertalk.com. This is the time to do it. Been red hot and on fire, top in profit last 7 days. You look for a bigger sample size than that. But college bowls are here. I've won my sixth straight college football bet yesterday. Have a 5% in the bowls that I just released today. And I think I have 3, 4, 5 bowl picks already in there. Really excited for that. Sunday Steam Room will go through every NFL game. We're going to fire 5%. Didn't have one last week, but I sure have one for this week. And holiday season is here, baby. Over these next 2 weeks, it's going to be a lot of fun, especially with the bowl games. Hope you guys are on board. Do some damage. Head on over to wagetalk.com.
Awesome stuff. Thank you, VR. And we will see you on Sunday. Based on the script, it looks like the deli is back open. Teddy's back with just his tip. And Joe, how high are you this week? I still have not picked a barking dog, but I promise after a quick break, I will find one for you guys. Marco, as your friend and as a friend to a lot of other people, I try to hold them accountable. And for their actions, for their mistakes, for their bad decisions. And now I feel compelled to do the same thing for you. I'm pretty sure 3 weeks ago on this show, you told me that you were not going to bet on this team. They beat the Jags last week, which was painful for me. And now you want to back who?
The New York Jets. That is this week's sandwich game. And, Kelly, it's one of those spots.
To hate us. They're gonna hate us, Marco. They're gonna hate us. They're gonna hate us, and I can't even wait to see the comments.
bring it on, because you know what? You've got to trust the process. And it's going to be a funky smell. I'm going to warn you, but you've got to trust the process. And here it is. The Rams just played 2 big games. In fact, it was their 2 biggest games of the season in back-to-back weeks. 2 weeks ago, they were in that barn burner with the Buffalo Bills where they won 44-42. We were on the right side in that game. We had the Rams. And then they came back 4 days later, going on the road, the short week, division, playoff hopes alive, all of that, and beat the 49ers in a rainstorm the entire night. Hard-fought, physical game. Get that win. Now they got to go on the road, cross-country. Yes, they have the advantage of 3 extra days. That is the only thing they've got advantage-wise going in this game. They're a warm weather team going to New York in late December. You know it's going to be cold there. You've got a situation coming off the satisfying win against the 49ers that now they are in first place, but they play next week the team that they've got to beat coming up for the division. So this is this perfect sandwich spot, coming off the Thursday night game, going across country, then closing with the division team next week. You've got to go with it. That Arizona game next week will decide the division for them, because no matter what they do this week, win or lose, they can end it next week beating Arizona. I'm taking the Jets here. And the key here, and I said they're dead to me, the reason I'm going to give them the reprieve and give them the pardon and bring them back in is last week was an absolutely meaningless spot for the Jets. They played the week before against Miami. Now, Miami was division rival, fighting for a playoff spot, and they took them to overtime and lost. They had absolutely no reason to show up last week in the Jacksonville game, and they did. That tells me this team hasn't quit. You have seen Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. As much as I don't like the two of them, they have been connecting more in the last few games, and the offense is starting to put points up. Last 4 games, 27, 21, 26, 32 points. Yeah, I said they're dead to me, but you know what? Sometimes, you're out, you see an old ex, you have a couple drinks, and you say, you know what? The good times weren't that bad, and you forget about the bad. All right, just pour me a drink and bring me on the Jets. Sandwich game of the week, Jets 27-20.
I have no idea what the hell you're talking about. Joe, maybe you're not too high and you can help break that down, because you're the resident Jets fan. Like Marco. Like, this isn't a bad ex. This is like the ex you had put in jail or like rehab or something. I mean, this isn't just like, hey, things didn't work out. Like, this was an abusive relationship with the New York Jets that Marco has.
Yeah, like, Marco, the fact that you're even still hanging out at the same bar that your ex is tells you there's a problem here, my friend. Your ass should have been out the back door the minute you whiffed that. I mean, the minute you whiffed that coming through there. My God, is that gross. Listen, Cal, sometimes, you can only tell a person so many times before they have to, unfortunately, learn the hard way. But I appreciate the spot, Marco, but my God, is that gross. I feel like I should get way high right now, just listening to him talk about that game. But instead, I do think we got one total that's extremely high this week, and that's going to be with Seattle taking on Minnesota here, as we've seen the early money come in on the over. I think it's even 43.5 now in some spots. It opened up at 42.5. And I don't agree. Listen, Geno Smith got hurt in that last game. I think the popular opinion is that anything Minnesota's involved, you might as well bet the over. Well, weather might be an issue this week in Seattle. We're looking at rain, shocker. We're looking at double-digit wind gusts. And we're probably looking at Sam Howell at quarterback for Seattle, as well as a banged-up offensive line for the Seahawks that could not protect at all Geno Smith last week, who was pressured just about 44% of his dropbacks. Then he ended up leaving the game with an injury. Shocker. They might be down there starting center as well. This is an issue for this Seattle Seahawks team. The one thing that's going to give them a shot, this is a big game because unfortunately for Seattle, they don't have time here to sulk because they are very much in a mediocre NFC West division, which is still up for grabs. They got Minnesota coming in, who, while yes, they have been winning games and they're doing great, but there is starting to see some holes here with this, with Sam Darnold and the offense. He's starting to throw, like Sam Darnold has done in the past, far too many balls that can be INT'd and turned over. And give Minnesota credit there. O'Connell was just absolutely phenomenal. He decided to take it out of his hands last week and started running the ball more in that game and tried to limit what was going on with Sam Darnold's couple of games like that. And I think we're going to get a lot of that here this week. I think it's going to be much more running. I don't see Minnesota allowing Sam Darnold here to throw the ball and get picks by this defense that is going to look to bounce back after that loss to Green Bay on Sunday night. When you put it all together, possible backup quarterback for Seattle, Minnesota team that their quarterback, Sam Darnold, has been good, but I think they're going to spend more time running the ball with the weather conditions as they may be, and I don't care who starts at quarterback for Seattle. We're not getting a ton of points from them. So even a Seattle team total under when you can get it, but I think the under in this game is the way to look. This number is way too high for me.
Way too high at 42 there for Joe Raineri. Look towards the under. Teddy, we're going to start to pivot here on your Just a Tip, and we're going to start looking at teams we want to buy or sell going into the playoffs. You have a team that's not necessarily been under the radar, but I find really interesting, at least geographically for myself, in Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I went back and looked at my notes. I used Tampa Bay as a buy team in week 2 this season. And we talk about Just the Tip stock watch. We're talking about this week. And really, I try to use it about a month. You know, the next 4 or 5 games, a team that I think there's hope for. A team that is likely to cover more points than they don't. And Tampa right now is absolutely that team. Let's look at some future book odds for a minute. All right. In the NFC, the Lions, the Eagles, those are the 2 favorites. They're both in the plus 200 to plus 240 range right now if you shop around. Then you have the Vikings and the Packers. They're both in the 6-1 range, plus 650 if you shop around. The Bucs and the Rams, both, you can find 15-1, 18-1 if you shop around. And of those 2 teams, I think Tampa's the better of the 2 choices. 18-1. I'm not talking about to win the Super Bowl. I'm talking about to come out of the NFC. All right? They don't have to win anything. And, of course, obviously, if they win a playoff game, you can start to hedge. The Bucs have been in the playoffs each of the last 4 years. They've won a Super Bowl title during that span. They won a playoff game last year. Baker's won at least one playoff game every time he's been in the playoffs. He beat Pittsburgh when he was in Cleveland. You know, they're likely to have a home playoff game. They're not losing this division, I don't think. The Falcons imploded. The Saints are a disaster. Carolina, I don't think anyone's rallying to knock off Tampa from the NFC South. So that means a home playoff game. And you look at some of the numbers. This team number 2 in the NFL yards per carry. What do we love this time of year? Teams that can run the football and stop the run. You know, last week against LA, 223-32 in that regard. The run game is extraordinary right now. The offensive line's playing really well. And even with their injuries in the secondary, I think Tampa is alive to make some noise, both down the stretch in the regular season and maybe to start the postseason as well. So let's buy the Bucs as our stopwatch this week and look for Todd Bowles' squad to make us some money moving forward.
All right, well, I'll take a team that is not alive to make the playoffs this week. Let's go to the barking dog segment. And this was a tough one just because I feel like we've hit this point of the season where, yes, some teams are going to come out and be able to play spoiler. But, man, I don't know. I went with Carolina here. I'm going to say this. They were able to play almost spoiler versus a team named Kansas City and a team named Philadelphia until last week when they were a favorite for the first time in, 2.5 years. And then they just get blown out by the Giants. But I don't think that killed all the, superficial momentum that this team has created around Bryce Young and kind of his resurgence since, getting benched. Yes, they are 0-4 in their last 4 games, but Carolina wants to win games, and they've won a few games, names teams called the Raiders, Giants, and Saints, which one could argue are the worst teams in the NFL right now. And then you have a Cardinals team on the flip side who just beat up on the Pats, which was my barking dog last week. So I am betting against the Cardinals once again this week, and we'll see if 4.5 on the road isn't just a little bit of a trappy line. Keep in mind, the Cardinals do well against piss poor teams like Carolina, but I do think Carolina is still fighting, does want to get a play spoiler here, at least for the next week or so. I can tell you this right now, there's going to be a lot of parlays with Cardinals money line, and I think the bookmakers are going to be looking really, really hard on that. Again, I know Carolina has lost 4 straight, but 2 of those came by 3 or fewer points against good teams named the Bucs and the Chiefs at that. So give me the points here with Carolina. But again, don't be surprised to see them be able to get a win here at home. The doctor is in, and thank God, because he's got to remove the pain in my side that has been the NFL this year. Andy Lang, my Splash Sports lineups keep going 3-1, 2-2, just rather frustrating. It's better than my NFL bets, though, that were just absolutely atrocious last week. You got to get me through the home stretch here, and this one was a surprising one.
I think some of these stats are going to surprise everybody. First off, it's plus money, and we're going to take Caleb Williams to not throw an interception. And Kelly, this is a stat that I think is going to blow everybody away. Caleb Williams doesn't have an interception in the last 8 games. He only has 1 in the last 11 games. First game of the season, no interceptions, and he goes 2 games in a row against Houston and Indianapolis where he throws 2 interceptions. He's not been throwing interceptions. Now, he's taking a lot of sacks. He's throwing the ball away. He's running, but he's not throwing interceptions. And the Lions defense, we all know, is completely banged up. I mean, it's a defense full of backups. They have 14 interceptions on the year. But the last 3 weeks since all these injuries have started, they have no interceptions, including a game against Caleb Williams where Caleb went 39 pass attempts. I believe that was the Thanksgiving game. This is just one of those hidden under the radar props that's plus money. I guess the books are probably thinking he's due, but he's throwing the ball a ton. He's over 30 pass attempts over the last 8 games. He's done that in 7 of them. He's just not throwing the ball away to the wrong team. So we'll keep riding this. I was surprised that we get plus money on here against a banged up Lions defense, but we'll keep riding Caleb Williams to not throw an interception this week.
Yeah, I keep wanting to back the Bears. I'm on this like back and forth conundrum, right?
Team total
tough.
on the Bears. Like I'm with you. This Lions defense is not the defense. I'm with you on the Bears. It's terrifying. It's scary. Anybody you tell, I want to back the Bears this week, they're like, no way. And it's like, no, they're going up against a backup defense. I support you with the Bears here, Kelly. I really do.
Yeah, we'll see if I can actually stomach it, Andy. I may need a Pepto-Bismol or 2 from the doctor. All right, Mr. Proptologist, please let everybody know where they can find all of your stuff over at wagertalk.com as well as Instagram and X.
Yeah, social media, Andy Lang Bets, and if you want all plays, wt.buzz/AL. Kelly, we are closing out an amazing 2024. We're going to be up over 100 units at the end of the year. We were up 91 last year. Since January 1st, 2023, nobody has brought in more units at Wager Talk than myself. So it's a great time to get a long-term package. Wager Talk is running a special for a year's worth of plays at 40% off. Really, really encourage everyone to take advantage of long-term package. We're number 1 the last 3 days, and we're number 1 the last 2 years. Short-term success, long-term success. We've proven it. We built our bankroll along with clients. We can help you build yours. Go to wt.buzz/AL. Take advantage of that year-long special. Good luck. And as always, Kelly, take 2 of these and call me in the morning.
That will be the plan. Surely that will help me cash some tickets before this NFL season is over. All right. Thank you to Andy Lang. Now it's time to check in with Art DeCesar from the Westgate Superbook. Art DeCesar from the Westgate Superbook joins us each and every week here on Bet On It to give us a look behind the counter. Art, week 16, it's got to be better than week 15, surely, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a good time, though. Fun time of the year, man. 3 weeks left, a lot of playoff implications, and you basically get NFL games on, like, every day, which is awesome. So makes it a lot of fun for us.
Listen, I'm glad you're having fun. I was more alluding to my 0-3 that I had last weekend, taking a couple of garbage teams. And by garbage, I mean, like, I had the Colts. It was not very much fun after Jonathan Taylor decided not to go into the end zone. And then, of course, AR-15 throws a pick six. That was all she wrote for me. So I need some good advice for this weekend because we got to turn it around.
Yeah, that Colt game was brutal. I mean, after Taylor drops the ball, everything that could go wrong went wrong for the Colts. I mean, they even got the ball back and then punted it to Denver. Denver basically scored on a punt. You talked about the pick six. That was a disaster.
Done with the disaster teams, but I have a feeling that's going to be what the biggest needs are for this week at the Westgate. Unfortunately, I've come to realize you guys need all the ugly dogs that nobody wants a part of and generally the primetime unders.
That's true. There is a lot to that. We've gotten back kind of on track here in the NFL the last couple of weeks because it's been a tough season overall. NFL has not been a great season for us. It feels like we can never get anything to go our way. But the last couple of weeks, we've kind of gotten back to winning ways, which is good. Doesn't make up for, the previous 10 or 12 weeks. But, maybe we can ride this momentum of the last 3 weeks and then 3 or 4 weeks of the playoffs and Super Bowl and, come out as a winner in the NFL, which would be nice.
All right, your biggest Super Bowl liability is who as it stands today, December 18th, 2024?
It's still the Kansas City Chiefs.
Wow.
The Chiefs are still our biggest liability. The Lions are right there, but the Lions are obviously going to get hurt here with the injuries. And we were as low as 4-1 on the Lions. We raised them back up to 5-1. I think the bets are going to stop coming in on the Lions. They never stop coming in on the Chiefs. I mean, we can make the Chiefs even money, minus money. It doesn't matter. People bet the Chiefs no matter what. The team who obviously can go win the Super Bowl, Buffalo, would be a great result for us. Buffalo, who obviously is going to be right there in the mix here with 3 or 4 teams. Man, if Buffalo can go win the Super Bowl, that'd be a great result for us. Eagles not that good. Ravens are kind of so-so. So out of the 4 or 5 major teams, we want Buffalo to go win the Super Bowl.
That is kind of crazy. I would not have expected you guys winning Buffalo. And boy, after last weekend, do they look like they could go out there and win a Super Bowl. Also, in regards to needing some of that Chiefs money offset, I told John Murray, just hang a no. I'll fly out and put down a wager on the Chiefs. No Super Bowl. I think you guys are going to get your wish. But let's get into week 16 and some of your biggest needs, some of your sharp bets that you've seen.
Yeah, let's start with the sharp stuff. Washington took sharp money, plus 3.5 at home against the Eagles. That is now free. The Niners, heavy sharp money. That was plus 2.5 at Miami. That is now down to 1, moving towards pick in that game. Both teams 6-8. Both teams' seasons look to be over. I guess they're both mathematically alive. So basically, loser goes home in this game. And then a bunch of totals have moved. Bengals, Browns. All Bengal games seem to go over, and they continually bet Bengal games over. But the Sharps took under this week. 49.5 all the way to 47. Ravens, Steelers, they took under 46.5. That's now 44. And Buffalo and New England, they took over 45. That is now 46.5. So you've seen some 2.5, 1.5 point moves on a couple of totals. And the public's lining up on Detroit minus 6.5 at Chicago. And they're going to lay 3 with the Rams at the Jets. They like what they see out of the Rams. Public is finally starting to notice what the Rams are putting together. And obviously the Jets have been such a disaster this year.
Yeah, the Jets have been a disaster this year, and they still beat the Jags last week. Maybe people are all of a sudden coming around on that team. All right, Art, you join us every single Saturday on Last Call to give us a look behind the counter as far as a college perspective. We will see you then. Make sure everybody is giving Art a follow at ArtDice21, and we appreciate you coming in each and every week here on Bet on It.
Yeah, Kelly, we'll talk Saturday. It'll be fun. We can break down the remaining 3 college football playoff games. So that should be fun. We'll see a lot of action coming in Saturday morning.
The Stat Daddy is ready to bring you guys all of the TNA for this week in the NFL. He's got his glasses on. I've got mine on because it is time to grab your magic pen and go to school. Ralph, what are you going to teach us today?
Well, Kelly, we are going to be backing the Lions. And not only are we backing the Lions, we're happy to fade the Chicago Bears. You know, you look at the Bears and are their struggles explainable? 100% explainable. You fire your coach, you get rid of your OC, then your new OC, when your offense was doing well, you promote him to interim head coach. And now a young quarterback in a rookie season, as the season starts progressing, he wears down. He has his third person calling plays for him. That is a reason they're on the losing streak they are. And in the last 7 weeks, 9 points, 3 points, 19, 27, 20, 13, and 12. A clear situation where I'm not afraid to fade them. You look at Detroit. They were off a great game against Buffalo, a home loss, 48-42. Both teams with over 520 yards, 1,100 yards almost in that game. But Detroit really did impress me with 30 first downs in this game. If you're worried and say, oh my God, the Lions are now have an injured running back and he's out for the year, well, let's not forget, Montgomery had 771 yards and 4.3 yards per carry. Gibbs has 300 plus more yards, 1,016 yards, and 1.4 yards per carry better, averaging 5.7 in that span. The TNA, Kelly, since 2015, home teams as a favorite or a small dog with their opponent off a loss as a home favorite. So the Bears at home, the Bears at home as a dog of 3.5 or more against a team off a loss as a home favorite, 17-56. Only 23% against that roll. So you're the inferior team already, and you have a fired up team coming into play with you. When you look at Detroit, from week 8 on and later, if you have a win percentage above 65% and you're off a loss as a home favorite, those teams have gone 63% against the spread. Again, that goes back to 2015. And if they are now playing a division opponent off that loss as a home favorite, they got a 16-5, 76.2%. Detroit still tied with Minnesota at 12-2 for the NFC North Division title. But remember, the Lions now 9-0 straight up and 9-0 ATS the game after a loss since November 2022, with the average win by 15.1 points per game. The Bears in those 8 straight losses have lost by 11.1 points per game. And that offense, again, with the third different person calling plays in the first 12 games of the season, averaging only 283 yards per game and 14.8 points per game, and they've only topped 15 points twice. Finally, an NFL division home dog on a short week off a Monday night loss versus another division foe, only 2-12, another fade situation for the Bears. Add it up, we know we have the best coach as far as ATS-wise goes in the NFL, and even better off a loss, Detroit Lions, the Ralph Michaels best bet for this week.
I guess that means I'm not going to be back in the Bears. Thank you, Ralph, for talking me off the ledge I appreciate you. Make sure you guys are giving Ralph a follow at Cal Sports LV over there on X. He puts out tons of TNA. You can also go to his homepage, wt.buzz/RM, for all of his premium plays. All right, guys, it's now time for some of those best bets. All right, Marco D'Angelo, you always get to go first on the best bet segment. So let's hear who you have for week 16.
Well, Kelly, before I get to the best bet, we've got a special offer. I got two offers for you this week. The first one is to anybody that has never purchased a play at Wager Talk. First-time buyers, you can get 3 days of my plays for just $29. That's a $69 value. You can get it for just $29. First-time customers only. Just use coupon code GIFT3. That's the word gift and the number 3. You get 3 days, and that includes anything that I have for that 3-day period, including a 5% play, which, by the way, are now 18-4 after our big win last week with Tampa Bay. And those plays by themselves sell for $35. The other deal that's open to everybody is you can buy the month of January right now for $2.99. Get every play in the month of January, all sports. We'll throw in the rest of December free. That's good for me and any other capper at Wager Talk. So take advantage of that. Now let's get to that best bet this week. And you know what? Last week we were all over the Philadelphia Eagles is our best bet. This week we're going to be all over going against the Philadelphia Eagles as our best bet. Is Philadelphia officially is now the new flavor of the month in the NFC. After they beat the Steelers last week, as we predicted, everybody is printing those Super Bowl tickets in Philadelphia. Dan, don't print them just quite yet. Don't buy yours. Wait a little bit. Don't jinx them. But this is an absolute horrible spot for them. The Eagles have won 10 in a row, and now they're coming off that Pittsburgh game in which they beat in-state rival. And granted, it's not a division game and it's not a conference game, but there was, very, very satisfying beating, and I will say it, the big brother of the state, the Steelers. They've already beat Washington in the first meeting, but if you go back to that first meeting and you look at the final score and you see 26-18, you think, okay, Philadelphia, they had control of that game. Washington was playing better earlier in the season, and if you go back and look at the stats and look at the game, it got broken open in the fourth quarter. Actually, Washington had a 10-6 lead heading to the fourth quarter before Barkley just went off in that fourth quarter, breaking runs and just crushing the souls of Washington. I look for Washington, who is fighting for their wild card spot, to come back and get this game. This is a game the Washington needs. They're fighting several teams for the wild card. Philly locked up the division last week. Yes, they're still in a battle with Detroit for the number 1 seed. And with the injuries that Detroit has, and Detroit has a couple tough games coming up, Philadelphia kind of in the driver's seat to get that home field. But I think this is a spot where Washington gets it done, and everybody's going to point, well, Washington was lucky to win last week. You know what? They blew a 17-point lead. I think they got up 17-0 in that game, and unfortunately, as a young team does, they started to look ahead to this week to Philadelphia, and it almost cost them. Washington's 9-4 on their last 13 games, and all 4 of those losses have been by 1 score. I'm going to take Washington to get the job done this week. We've seen it over and over again. All these teams, whenever everybody jumps on the bandwagon, that's whenever they lose. 2 weeks ago, we did that with the Rams against Buffalo. I'm doing it this week with Washington against Philly. Washington outright, a little sprinkle as well, 27-24.
Marco, I don't know if this is good news or bad news, but I liked Washington as well. You just beat me to them in the script. So good luck to you. You're going to need it this week. All the jokes. Joe Raineri, per usual, you have to go, some weird way. At least you're not giving out prop bets these days. But first half unders for Joe Raineri. First half plays always. And well, as I mentioned, how the way my week went last week, I would have been 2-1 if I just bet the teams in the first half and saved myself a lot of heartache in the fourth quarter.
Okay, we told you last week, right? Take the Houston Texans in the first half against the Miami Dolphins as our best bet. And sure enough, Houston wins the first half. That's what they do. Now, I believe 10-2 on the season here in the first half of games. And that is going to be the best record in the National Football League since Detroit was not winning in the first half of that game last week against Buffalo. I'm going to look at these Texans again as they've got a short week now heading to Arrowhead to take on Kansas City. It's the 1 o'clock game on Saturday. And listen, that was C.J. Stroud coming out of a bye at home, which we certainly thought was worth backing at that pretty much even money price last week against Miami. Trying to back C.J. Stroud on the road? No, can't do it. And I don't care who plays quarterback, by the way, for the Kansas City Chiefs. If I'm Andy Reid, likely Mahomes is not sniffing the field for this game here. Carson Wentz will likely be the quarterback here. The bottom line to me is that you've got two teams that are not up-tempo, have no interest in running to the line of scrimmage in any way, shape, or form. And even though Houston won that game last week, they posted less than 200 yards of offense, and they had just 12 first downs against the Miami Dolphins defense. What do you think is going to happen this week against Spagnuolo's defense there in Kansas City, who, by the way, is the reason why they still have a 64% chance to secure the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. I don't think Mahomes plays, and I certainly don't trust C.J. Stroud or this offense. I do trust their defense, and I do believe their defense will keep them in the game here, especially with Carson Wentz. Either way, I don't like the full game under. We know how profitable Stroud and company have been to the under this year. This is not a big offense. I do think he's going to be under duress. I think there's going to be issues. They still don't cover in the second half. They're good in the first half. But when you consider the situation for both teams, I like the first half under here, Cal. 21 or 20 and a half to me. And of course, I think if you get Mahomes announced at some point that he's going to play, this number might creep up here a little bit. But if it's Carson Wentz, doesn't make a difference. I don't think we're getting points early. I don't think we're getting points late. But I'll take my chances in the first half that both defenses run the show in this game. So I'll look at that first half under and look to cash another ticket in a best bet here.
Okay, take your handicapping to the next level with a 1-year all-access pass with your favorite Wager Talk handicapper for just $11.88, normally $2,000. That's only $99 a month for an entire year of premium picks, props, and of course, best bets across all sports. This does expire on Christmas Eve. Again, year-round winning for just $99 a month. Teddy is taking another total here. This time, we're looking at San Francisco and Miami.
Yeah. No, this is two teams who had their dreams crushed last week, and we're looking at 44.5 as a prevailing number right now. I don't know how these two teams get to 44.5 points. I don't expect them to get to 44.5 points. I do like the under in this ball game. We talk about San Francisco. They're 1-4 in their last 5 games. The only win coming in a complete no-show game from the Bears off 3 straight heartbreaking division losses. All right. They scored 17 or less in all 4 of those defeats. This is not an offense that's clicking. Last week against the number 27 ranked defense in the NFL, yards per play. That's the only stat that I care about when it comes to defense, or the number 1 stat when it comes to ranking the defenses. Rams number 27, and the 49ers last week, 3.3 yards per carry, no touchdowns, 191 total yards. They didn't even get to the red zone in that ball game. So now they're traveling east for an early start game? No, this is not it's not an early start game, but they're traveling east. It's not a situation where I'm expecting this offense to click. It hasn't clicked. And, the Brock Purdy questions continue to pile up for San Francisco. We're not going to see the second coming of Deebo Samuel this week. At least I don't think so. So certainly from the San Fran side of the equation, this is not a team that I trust to put up points in bunches. Before I talk about Miami, Kelly just mentioned it. I want to talk about it too. That year-round winning, just $99 a month. Again, doesn't matter who you pick. Me, Marco. You can pick Gianni. You can pick Andy Lang. You can pick Ralph. You can pick any of the handicappers at wagertalk.com. There's no promo code needed. Find your guy and get on board. $99 a month for a full season. That's worth something. It is a good value. Take advantage if you want to get on board with one of the wagertalk.com handicappers, including myself. Miami's coming off a game in which they scored 12 points, didn't get to the end zone against Houston. All right. And Tua was throwing picks in that ballgame. All right. The quotes after the game from Tua, quote, "I got to protect the ball. I got to play better." What does that mean? One would anticipate fewer downfield shots against the Niners defense that's still playing. All right. So we're looking at Dinkin and Duncan from this Miami offense. They played without both starting tackles last week. Jalen Waddle got hurt. Don't know if any of the guys are going to play here. This is not an offense that's primed to click. They only gained 3.6 yards per play against Houston a week ago, and they're placing a defense that's every bit as good this time around. So 44.5 looks very, very high for this better. I like the Dolphins, Niners under the total.
All right, and as much as I gave Marco grief about going back to his ex, I'm going to back a team this week that I backed last week, and I've been bitching about the entire show. But of course I am. I'm going to lay 3.5 here with the Colts. I know it is absolutely gross and probably more of a play against the Tennessee Titans. Let's look at the last time these two played. Joe Flacco was the quarterback, and there was no Jonathan Taylor. Colts went on the road 2017. Now we should have a healthy Jonathan Taylor, and I do think Anthony Richardson is better than Joe Flacco. Joe Flacco, 2 touchdown passes in that game, 1 interception. These guys are not that significantly different. Now, the Titans, well, what did they have last week? Another really gross performance by Will Levis. So now he's benched. And Mason Rudolph is going to be the starter. He looked all right last week. Not going to say anything bad about him here. And maybe that does give a little bit of an uptick for this Titans team. But the bottom line is they are just inept. They have covered just 2 of their last 14 games, and one of those games was a push. They don't cover games on the road. They don't cover games in the division. This team is disgusting. So this is, again, as much as I was very upset with myself in that fourth quarter, backing Indianapolis last week, who, by the way, in the third quarter, it was up 13-7. And of course, then they started to derail. I'm going to take the Colts here. Maybe I should take a page out of Joe's book and just bet them in the first half. Thank you guys for hanging out with us here on Bet On It. Marco, Joe, Teddy, VR, Andy, Ralph, and of course, Art DICESARE from the Westgate Superbook. We appreciate you guys each and every week. We're going to take you all the way to the Super Bowl here on Bet On It. So stay with us, even through my 0-3 weekend. I appreciate you guys. Make sure you give us a like, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode of Bet On It. Until next week, good luck, do some damage, and as Marco always likes to say, let's bet on it.